Hey guys, so recently I received the A10 and the very first print was the one that came on the SD card. It was a sample print, the little dog. I'll put a picture up right now. Came out really nice. I really like the way it turned out. But once again, this was a pre-sliced model from Geeetech. So what I want to do is I want to slice my own model, start printing with a new profile for the A10 and see how everything looks at that point. So what I want to do is I want to go into Cura and I want to go ahead and create a profile, and I'll show you how I'm going to do that. Okay, so as you can see, this is Cura. This is 3.3.1. I haven't updated to the newest one yet. I will do it eventually, but it's been working fine for me, so I just want to go ahead and kind of stick with this one for the time being. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create a new profile. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to go to Settings. Excuse me, there we go. I want to go to Printer, and I want to add a printer. Now, Cura, of course, is made for Ultimaker. That's the #1 printer that this is made for. What we're going to do is we're going to end up going with a custom, because if you look under Other, you're not going to find Geeetech. It's just not there. It's not a printer that's supported by Cura out of the box. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and create a custom profile. So it's going to be a custom FDM printer. We're going to change the name to Geeetech A10. Add printer. Now from here, we got to take and do a few things. First thing we want to do is we want to set up our bed size. Our bed size is going to be 220 by 220. I believe it's actually 260, but I'm just going to do 240. I can't remember if it's 260 or 240, so I'm just going to go with 240 just to be safe. So I don't want to max anything out anyway. And so it's going to be rectangular bed. We're going to be using Marlin firmware. That's what this particular printer uses. This is print head settings. Computer's freaking out for a moment. Print head settings. I'm not even going to mess with that right now. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here. Oh yeah, be sure to check heated bed, because this is a heated bed. We don't check origin at center because that is going to be for a Delta style printer, because that's how they operate. And in the case of this, we're not going to do that. Next thing to do is go over to extruder 1, 0.4 millimeter nozzle. That's what came with this printer. We want to change this to 1.75 for the filament. I'm not going to play with any offsets at the moment because I want to see where this prints. Depending on if it prints to the front of the build plate, to the back of the build plate, or to the side, I can take and set some offsets. But at the moment, we're going to leave that alone, just see what happens with it. So we're going to go ahead and hit Finish. So if you look up here, it says Geeetech A10. That's great. Now I need to take and set up a profile for it. Now, all these things that are in here right now pre-populated from the A30, which isn't a bad start. I am going to change this to a 0.2 layer height, because that's usually the layer height I print at. Initial layer height, I always go with a 0.3 because the beds are never 100% flat. So by going to a 0.3 millimeter height, that allows the filament to flow out and fill up the kind of the rough spots in the build plate, let's say. Line width is going to be the width of the nozzle. The nozzle is a 0.4 millimeter nozzle, so line width is going to be 0.4 millimeters. Info line width, same thing, 0.4 millimeters. Skirt, brim, it's going to be a 0.4 millimeter. Initial line width. Now this is where I usually go about 115. Either 115 or 110. Right along in there seems to work good. That gives it that extra little bit of filament to fill up any little discrepancies in the bed. Wall thickness. I personally go with 1.2. Depending on what you're printing, you can change this to whatever you want. But I usually go with 1.2 on everything. And this, once again, is going to be just a preliminary getting it set up. Tweak all the settings you want after this, but this just gets it set up. Fill density. 20% is a good start. Actually, I'll just go like 15% for whatever I want to print right now. Uh, Grid pattern's a really good pattern. I personally like zigzag because it uses less material in the infill. Gradual infill steps, I've never messed with it, so I don't even want to start that right at the moment. Default printing temperature for the filament I'm using right now, 210 seems to be the magic number, so I'm going to just make that 210. I was going to make it 210 all the way through. You can actually adjust your initial layer to be a higher temperature or lower temperature. I'm just going to go with 210. Diameter is 1.75. You got to be sure to make sure that is set. Flow 100%. For the rest of the print, I want a 100% infill. Only the first layer do I go with a little bit more percentage on the flow. So for the first layer, 115%, and then after that, just 100%, and that way everything should just work out right. I always enable retraction. Once in a while you won't, but for the most part you do. For the Bowden style extruder, both on the A30 and on the TiVo Tarantula, 6.5 seems to be the magic number. Retraction speed, 25. You can go as high as I believe 40, but 25 seems like it's been working, so I'm going to see how that works with this machine. Retraction minimum travel. I don't like setting this to be a really small number because you want to minimize the retraction as much as possible. So I'll usually go about 5 millimeters. Okay, so then we go to print speed. 60 millimeters per second for print speed. That is kind of a round number. That seems to work good on about any printer. As time goes on and the printer proves itself, I can speed this up, or I can slow it down if I'm having a lot of patterns in the print that I can't explain. I can actually slow that down a little bit. Outer wall speed, it's cut in half. Really, I can go probably 35 to help speed the print up, and it should be just fine. Travel speed, 120 millimeters per second. That's a little bit fast. I don't know why, because that didn't auto-populate from the previous one. I'm actually going to bump that down to 90. Let's make it 100. It should be fine with that. That minimizes kind of the jerks and everything in the print, because when you start moving flex from one area of the build plate to the other, you do it too fast, it creates enough of a shake in the machine to where it can cause you problems with your print. So I like to keep it a little bit on the slower side. Combing mode, all. Combing is where it's pretty much going to try keeping the nozzle over the printed area, not pass over. Like, let's say if you're printing a cup, you don't want it to jump over the unprinted area and end up causing strings between it. You want it where it just kind of travels inside the printed area. Avoid printed parts when traveling. That is if you are doing, like, say you're doing towers, you don't want to take and go from this tower over another tower to the first tower, because otherwise it can knock that over. You want to take and just go ahead and have it where it just kind of moves over to the side and then gets into it. Z-hop when retracted. That should be checked. And the Z-hop, you want to do it for 0.5 millimeters. Now this machine, I can go 1 millimeter. There won't be an issue with it because of the board that this machine uses. On the A10, on the E180, on the D200, on those machines, never exceed 0.75 millimeter. There is an issue in the firmware that if you do, your print will never complete. I don't understand it. Geeetech is the one that actually told me that there's an issue with that. So stick with 0.5 millimeter for Z-hop, 0.75 maximum, and you're safe. Anything, if you try going 1 millimeter, it will, I guarantee you on those other ones, you will not complete a print. You will be like, how come it didn't complete? That's going to be a reason. It's because of the G code. Cooling. We're going to go 100% fan speed. Regular fan speed at 0.3 millimeters. That's meaning after the first layer, actually by rights that should be 0.5 millimeters. That way I get the first layer down completely. After the second layer, then the fan will kick on. Minimum layer time. I like to set that for 10 seconds. That way, if you're doing a print, you want a 10-second cooling period before you come back over it. Otherwise, you start getting that melted look to it. And so, given it 10 seconds, that's plenty of time for the cooling fan and everything to kind of congeal everything. Supports, if I was going to do a print with supports, this is where I'd click it in order to do that. I'm not going to do any supports today. But if you do, little piece of advice. Go over here to overhang angle. These printers have no problem with 75%. You can even go 80% and you'll be fine. Anything over that, that's when I really recommend using supports. Zigzag pattern seems to work great. And then, yeah, none of these auto-populated correctly. Support Z distance. You want to set your Z for being 0.3 millimeters. And then we're going to do the support X and Y distance. That's set at 0.7. That's pretty good. But yeah, Z you definitely want to give a little bit of a gap. Otherwise, your infill or your support material will never break off. You can also enable support roof and support floor. Nice thing about those, it prints as a dense, instead of just having support material that your print starts printing out over these lines that always seem to like want to hang on to the print, it'll actually print a solid roof or floor for the print to print over. Makes it a little bit easier to pull your supports off as well. But once again, we're not doing supports, so I'm just going to go ahead and take that back off. Just wanted to explain what that was. I'm not going to use a brim. I'm going to use a skirt. Skirt distance, 3 millimeters. 3 millimeters is just fine. That way, if it's a large print, you know whether it's going to go off the build plate or not. You'll know at that point. So 3 millimeters stays within 3 millimeters of your print. That's good. Skirt line count, I always go with 3. That way, it primes that nozzle really good before it starts the print. So that's a good rule of thumb right there. Print sequence all at once. Reason why is because if you're putting multiple parts on your build plate, forgive the ding, if you're printing multiple parts on your build plate, you do not want to print a part, let's say if it prints here, and then all of a sudden you're needing to print over here, that whole area is going to knock off your print. So the best thing to do is go all at once. That way it prints, you know, however like that. It just does everything one layer at a time. Special modes. I really don't need to mess with special modes, but if you ever want to do vase mode or vase mode on this, that's in Cura, it's called spiralized outer contour. So you'll find that under your special modes. Experimental, I like fuzzy skin, but at the same time, today's print's not going to have fuzzy skin. But if you ever want to print something like, you can check out the mount I have for my camcorder. I'll put a link to it right up here. Cura's got this cool setting where it'll actually shake the nozzle as it's printing, so it gives it this fuzzy skin, which is really cool for hanging on to stuff. I like that one. But today we're not going to mess with that. So today I'm going to take and download a moose. My wife says she wants me to print a moose. Who am I to take and argue with her? I found one over on Thingiverse. I'm going to download that. I'm going to throw it in here and slice it. In fact, let me go ahead and download it really quick. I'll show you how to slice that here in this. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to load that into Cura. By doing that, I'm just going to go up here to Open File. That's going to take me over to my downloads. I hope there's no porn on here, for goodness sake. There's not. So we're going to look for the moose. Well, it's supposed to be on there. There it is. Moose without support. At least it's supposed to be a moose without support. Find out here in shortly. Here's one thing that bugs me about Thingiverse. Sometimes people will take and they'll upload a model, and I don't know if you can see this little dot down here on the build plate. That's the moose. Calvin loves to do this to me. I don't know why. I don't understand why people will do that, and instead of making it a certain size, so you have to take and enlarge it. So what I did is I went to scale, and I'm trying to enlarge it. And the only bad thing is usually when you start with a very small model, as you increase the size, you lose the detail of it. Yeah, and it's also not in the right order here. So let's go ahead and first let's rotate it this way, and let's rotate it that way. Oh, wrong way. Let me get, computer's really lagging. Let's want to slice too at the same time. Let's go ahead and turn it this way, so whenever I'm printing it, still like that. So when I'm printing it for the camera, everybody can see how it's printing and everything. Let's see, how big is this thing now? Let's go back over here to scale. Now the fastest way of doing this is pick out the scale that you want. If you want it to be 100 millimeters tall, so that'd be in the Z. I'm just going to do 100 millimeters. That makes it that big. That'll be a good start for this printer for me to give it a good test. That looks cool. So see with this one, it looks like they've already created a support that holds up the lower part of the mousse. As far as the rest of it, I believe it will print. Really, by rights, it should have support. We're going to go ahead and try it without support and just see what it does. I mean, whoever modeled this is how they believe it should be. So we'll give it a shot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my SD card. I'm going to pop it into my computer. Computer will recognize the SD card. In this case, it's calling it removable disk H. And then I'm just going to say save to removable drive. I'll click that. That saves to the SD card. Cura says it's going to be 2 hours, 19 minutes. Cura has a tendency of lying, but that's all right. As long as it prints, that's all we care. So I'm going to go ahead and take this. I'm going to pop that into the printer. I'm going to start it up, start the print, and I'll see you at the end of the time lapse. Okay, so it took 2 hours and 47 minutes to complete. Let's go ahead and take a quick look here and see how everything turned out. I must say for a first profile, that turned out all right. There's a little bit of wisps right there, which is no big deal. I can take the heat gun to that. At the same time, since there's no supports underneath that part, look at how it turned out. I'm really surprised it didn't do way worse than this. That's actually not bad at all. And then as far as this one, support comes right off. Just need to do a little bit of cleanup there. hit it with a heat gun a little bit, and I think that will look pretty good. Now I could adjust the temperature a little bit, maybe adjust it down by a few degrees, and that will take care of some of those little spider web looking hairs on it. Once again, for that portion of it, that's where support would come in handy to keep that from happening. But all in all, I think it turned out pretty good for a first profile print on it in Cura. That's not bad at all. My only issue is how it printed right here. Let's see, make sure I got this in the right position. I believe it. No, I got it wrong. Yes, that way. So look at the position on the bed. It printed to the left, and it printed forward from where it should be. It should be centered. So I'm not going to get into that in this video, but in the upcoming video I'll be doing shortly after this one, as soon as I finish it up, I'm going to start on it. I'm going to work on the profile a little bit more, fine-tune it, and work on getting it where it's going to be printing in the center of the bed instead of printing forward and to the left of center. Anyway, that's going to be for another video. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.